Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and we're here today to talk about the Warrior Prophet, chapters 14 through 17. I'm here with the crew, Daniel and Katerina. Daniel, do you want to give us a quick introduction?
Hi, I'm Daniel. I've read these books a couple times now, and it's been fun slowly rereading them and breaking it down with Katerina and Steve.
And hey, I'm Katerina, and this is my second time reading through The Warrior Prophet.
Okay.
Oh, what? I thought I mastered the introductions already. Man.
Man. Yeah. Speaking of mastering introductions, I always forget to mention this my first time reading this one. So it's my first time. It's Katerina's second time, and Daniel, he's read it like 17 times. So
Maybe
Since
you
it's
should
your
just say that at the beginning of every episode.
yeah,
It would spare us a lot of trouble.
yeah, I always forget that.
since it's your first time, what did you think?
Well, I think a lot happened. Um, you this one reads differently than the first one. This book, I kind of feel like it reads. It's not as dense. It doesn't. I shouldn't say that. It doesn't feel as dense. But when you go back and you like when I went back and wrote notes for it and kind of getting my thoughts together for this conversation, I have like a page full of things that happened and references for page numbers. So it's almost like it doesn't feel like a lot, but it's a lot. It's just easier because I think we're aware of factions and characters and some motivations, so I think it makes it easier to kind of absorb it than the first book did for me.
Yeah, and I think there is also a lot more action in this book.
Mm-hmm.
So you get some moments of relief where you don't have to think too hard between the parts where you actually do. So I think that helps. I think that helps a bit to have a few battles in between.
Yeah, breaks it up. So, what do you think, Daniel? You've read it. What's your do you have a different perspective on it this time than you did before that you remember?
Mm, to some extent. It's been a while since I've read them, so it's feels sort of new again. Like I know what happens, but I don't know when it all happens. So, well, I kind of do, but now that I know mostly what happens, just some of the parts stick out to me a lot more than other parts, and it's oftentimes not the battle scenes.
Hmm.
It's the little weird in between moments, the Kellis perspectives and Sarsalis perspectives. We even had a Scaris perspective, didn't we, in this chapter or in these chapters? So those little things have been fun to go back and catch up on. My friend just sent me a link to the history of Irwa. It's like a 180-page B document
Hmm.
that I'm gonna have to go read now, I guess.
Is it
Does it?
something like is it an official guidebook? Like is it something that was written by Baker, or is it like a
No, I
fan made history
think
book?
this was like a 10-year long fan made history book.
Wow.
It looked pretty cool, the little bit I browsed through before I got on. So I'll share a link, but it'll be like after you read everything. I think there's some deep world building spoilers.
Hmm. Cool.
In this chapter, it talked about an an arc being the like what did he call it? The greatest terror to ever fall from the heavens. Did you
Hmm.
catch that part, Steve?
Yeah, I have it tabbed. I think. Yeah, I thought that was kind of peculiar. So I wondered if that was if one of these factions arrived from another place, kind of a whole nother. I don't know. I'm guessing it'll be explained later, but yeah, it was kind of strange.
It's once you go back and reread it all and read Akamian's dreams, since that's like not even a part of like the current story, that'll all make sense. And there's kind of references hidden in that you didn't catch.
Hmm. I get the feeling there's a lot I didn't catch. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think even if you read only the first trilogy and you go back and reread Darkness or The Warrior Prophet, you will see a lot of Easter eggs and a lot of foreshadowing of things that only make sense to you after you read at least the first three books, which is a nice thing to have on a reread. And it's something that I've been noticing while we've been reading through these two books.
Nice. We're almost done with book 2. Well, we're on the last part now, right? So it's exciting. We're getting there.
Yeah, I was surprised how quickly it went, actually. Seemed like we just got done with the darkness that comes before, really, to me.
It seems fast, but it's been like a few months.
Yeah, I know.
So, but it's been a lot of fun. So I think it's worked
I
out
mean,
really well.
yeah. It's true. I do remember the Warrior Prophet being a lot longer than it felt a lot longer when I read it the first time than it feels now. I guess it's probably because we've broken it up into like 6 parts. But I mean, a lot of things do happen, but somehow I remembered a lot more happens in the Warrior Prophet. But this one flew by, really.
Hmm. So the chapter 14 starts with Confus asking Martimus, is that his name, to bring Kellis's head, and talk about giving someone a cigar and a blindfold. I mean, that's a no-win situation for him.
Yeah, it wasn't good. Good thing he had 3 assassins to help him, and one's a Zuemi sword dancer, I guess. So, and I think he even told Martimus that he didn't trust him enough to let him kill him. He just wants him to bring him his head.
Yeah, I don't trust you that much. Just bring me his head. That's as much as I can trust you with.
And he doesn't even accomplish that. So I think Confus at this point has concluded that Martimus has become completely useless for him. And having him bring him Callus's head is just a way to punish him or to humiliate him. But I feel like Confus has had to accept the fact that Martimus has been lost to him. That he Callus's man, then he's definitely not Confus's man anymore.
Seems like that's been happening to a lot of people. He's has an influence on people, just slowly. I did like the Holy War. That when the right before battles, how the different factions have their little. They all deal with it differently. They all prepare differently. Some of them yell or sing or just stare into the sky, or they all. It gives that feeling of all these different people coming together for this holy war, and kind of puts it in the scale into perspective of how many different people there are for this one goal.
Yeah, all the people with like differences of opinion, only like bound by their faith, but everything else is basically different.
Mm-hmm.
And having 7 mile long formation of just different races all fighting for one cause. But the Phantom also has that.
Mm-hmm.
We just know less about it. But
Yeah, I mean the Inrithi part of Three Seas, like it's not a small part of the continent, but it's still just one part of the continent. So imagine there's other places with other nations and races and religions that we haven't even encountered yet.
It seems like a big scale, but I guess it's just, because we don't have the broader perspective yet. I'm guessing we will eventually.
Eventually.
They both shrugged. Yeah. So, and Noir, is it Noir? I always mispronounce his name.
I say Nair.
Nair. We've been doing this for like months, and I still can't pronounce his name right. But thankfully, he won't be banging down my door. But yeah, he trades Surway to teach Kellis the ways of war. What I thought was kind of, I don't know that. I'm wondering if Kellis really wanted him to teach him anything, or was he just was it just a way for him to influence and to manipulate.
I think that Masco War is something that the Dunyan like kind of know nothing about. Later in the chapter, when he talks about like his version of battle, it's like becoming a tree and conquering all space at once, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a large scale battle with all the different like tribes and all their strengths and weaknesses and guessing the enemy. There's just some knowledge Kellis was missing, I think, that he wanted to leech out of him. But he could have got it other ways. I don't really think that he needed Nair to teach him more.
Yeah, I think for the Dunane, the fact that there are so many unknown variables in a battle, there are so many people who are beyond your control. That makes a very difficult situation to predict, or it makes it very difficult to anticipate the outcome. Even if you have some understanding of who the people on your side are and how they will behave, Kellis still knows very little about the Phantom because he hasn't really had much opportunity to learn about them. So I think there is. I mean, I do agree with you that there is something. There are things that he can learn from Nayor about warfare. But does he? Could there have been other ways? Possibly. I mean, it does become even more clear later on why Kellis keeps on insisting to have Nayor around, right? There is this moment later on where he's basically decided to kill Nayor because he's no longer useless, and then he changes his mind. So I think Callis his intentions are not 100% clear, and there may be some emotions involved in his making this decision.
What did he say? He's like, what is this, father? Pity? Like he's never felt it before since he was 5 or something. What a weird feeling this is. I feel bad for this person.
Emotion? What is this?
It must be weird for a sociopath to just finally feel one. Or like a real one.
Yeah, I was surprised I was hoping he wouldn't kill him, but I was surprised that he decided not to.
I think even Callis was surprised.
Yeah, I think so.
And Nayor was completely out of it.
Because
So
he had just stabbed Kellis. He had already stabbed him once, like just before that. But it wasn't him. It was just a shorter Kellis.
Well, yeah, that's also after the skin spy interrogates, quote unquote, Surway, and the skin spy tells Surway some interesting things about So I don't know if that was a factor in Nair kind of being ready for it to be over. Seemed like he was prepared for it to die.
I mean, Surway does tell Nayor some things that he might not have wanted to hear, or better, he probably knew, but did not want to admit to himself. And I think hearing those truths about himself from her lips makes it's one of the things that pushes him over the line, and leads to his eventual breakdown or madness, whatever you want to describe his current psychological state. But it's not good. It's not a good place he's in right now.
Yeah. So, you know, and plus, I was surprised that he was because he goes back for Surway in the encampment. He goes to rescue her, and even at the cost of other people he could have saved or the mother and the child. That was really neat. Um, that whole sequence was really cool. There was one on 322, if you have this version of the book, but he walks in and says, I think he said this before, but it was like, I bear your fathers and your brothers upon my arms. And he says, who will murder me? I'm the most violent of all men. That was really neat. So, but to see him go back for Surway, and then she tells him those things, I think it kind of, because he starts to have other feelings for her. So maybe that played a role in it too.
I think you asked before about why she was so important to him, or why Callus decided to bring her with them. And I think in this section you get some answers as to the relationship between the three of them, and what Survey represents for Nayor, and how Callus has been able to use her to manipulate him. So I don't. Did that make things more clearer for you?
Yeah, I think it was good to get a different, because to kind of to him have those thoughts and to go back for her, it started to kind of flesh out his character for me. It started to make more sense.
What did you think about the whole battle? The Battle of the Slopes?
That I was a little bit confused about, to be perfectly honest. I was a little bit lost on exactly what exactly what happened. So I was hoping you can help me with that, because I was a little bit confused with how those events played out.
What about
Do you
you?
want to go ahead, Daniel?
Um, well, it had already been talked about how the Enrithi are like a slower army. They hold the line better, and the Phantom were like horseback. They could break their line and reform, whereas the Enrithi couldn't. In the Battle of Mengeda, what happened was they thought they broke the line, so they like rushed them, and then the line closed around them. So instead of learning that lesson, he basically did the same exact thing this time. And Scaris made it appear like they were weak and losing, and let them like chase till they got too far away from like having a solid line, and then enveloped them and made them all run by killing them. So then they swept through the Enrithi, what's it called, where all the camp followers are.
Yeah.
And that's where Nair was like running from them and killing a bunch of Phantom, and I guess finds their way and sees magic happen. And then the backup army that had not came out finally like showed up and pushed back, and since the Phantom had basically did the same thing that the Inrithi did and thought they won, so they like broke line and pushed too deep. When the actual backup army came, it would just bewildered them, and then they ran into Scars's camp and took him.
Hmm.
I think Saban brought his head in the end.
Of course, it's Saban. Yeah, I think this battle, unlike the Battle of Mengera, I think that the Battle of, is it Anwarat? Yeah, Anwarat. It's very messy, and I think it's supposed to be confusing, because you have two sides that decided for certain strategies that don't really work out in the end because both of them have prepared sort of an ambush for each other, and I think it's all. I would say it's was almost a matter of luck that the Inrithi won. Like it wasn't really clear until the very end that they would persist, but they did. Um,
They they had the Scarlet Spires, so in the back of your head you knew that they were gonna win.
well, we didn't know, so we didn't know that the Scarlet Spires were there with them because the whole time the Grandmaster, what's his name, Eleazaris,
Lazarus. I can't pronounce his name either.
Eleazaris, Eleazaris. The whole time he's been determined not to send the Scarlet Spires into a battle before they reach Shaima.
And this time it would have been like either fight or flight though, and we know how slow their flight is. So he had to come out and actually not have to run because they're not good at running.
Yeah, and we also later learned that he partially did that to accommodate Proyas, who was threatening him because of the kidnapping of a Kamian. So I guess the Inrithi were lucky that the Scarlet Spires were there, and also that Nayor had the foresight to have the Shrilanites as in reserve. But it was a messy battle. I read it twice, and I'm still not 100% sure what exactly happened.
Okay, good.
I think it said before Nair like left, he tried to signal a retreat, like a reformation, and everyone was like, "But we're winning," and trumpeters were like, "That guy's crazy. I'm not doing that." So no one trumpeted. No one even signaled the retreat, and they just charged and got wrecked because Kellis could he could see further than Nair just with his eyesight, so he could see exactly what battle was happening, and that like 7 miles away from them they were getting destroyed, and it was gonna like have an impact and cause the rest of the line to like run. So if they would have signaled retreat and they would have retreated back and reformed, it would have. They probably wouldn't even have needed the Scarlet Spires.
I don't know. It's unclear. I think it's just that there were a lot of different factions who managed to overcome eventually. That was like a combination of many factors that decided the battle. It's not that they won because of like one single point of strategy on one army, one part of the army. I think it's that the Shrila Knights were there as a backup. The Kidruhil were able to rescue the Ainunai. Proyas and Sobon were able to overcome the Shaigeki. It's just a combination of things combined with the Scarlet Spires, I would
Kellis
say.
was able to hold the Swazan standard, whereas they were able to break through and like kill all the drummers and cut the standard down.
Yeah, poor camels.
Yeah, that was it's a rough road for animals.
It would be scary to have a camel running at you full blast. Horses don't seem as scary to me.
It's the
I don't know.
elongated neck.
Something, I don't know, like the heaviness of the upper body with like the weird slender lower body. Horses are kind of like thick throughout.
But
And
they
I
have
think them to
hoops.
the left or right. Yeah, I don't like horses either. I've rode them, but
But there was one thing that Callus says to Martemis, I think, when they're up there on the hill defending the standard. He tells Martemis, after he had this whole lecture from Neor about war, he tells Martemis that war is conviction,
Mm-hmm.
which I find interesting if you compare it to what Confus says in the first book to Martimus, where he tells him that war is intellect.
Yeah, that's right.
I thought it was interesting. I don't know if Callus would disagree with the statement that war is also intellect, but it's interesting to compare the two and how they might describe different approaches or understanding of what war is and how you win one.
That's because I read that and I thought it was something different before and I forgot what it was. So I didn't catch that. So that was a good one. He also tells him this war is your war made honest.
yeah, he tells him that war is just like an argument. And that's why his people call it the Great Quarrel, I think. And Kellus is the king of arguing, so it seemed like after he said that, it all kind of became clear to Kellus. And then Nair lost his conviction that they were going to win, and he fled his own standard. And Kellus had to stay and show conviction.
Yeah, I did wonder for a while why it was so important to him to defend the standard. And then I guess I realized that by defending the standard, he was defending the fact that Naor, like he was defending Naor's strategy, and by defending Naor, he was defending himself, I guess, because he was the one who put Naor in that position. So I guess he was also saving his reputation.
He did another thing you liked too, and he caught a sword with his thumb in his finger. Right?
And then he did some voodoo acrobatics to avoid the arrows flying at him.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost. It's like the original Neo.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to
That's
dodge
right.
bullets, arrows.
Yeah, I guess dodging bullets is probably more challenging, but I wouldn't stand a chance against an arrow. That's for sure.
And I did start noticing, because I think we talked last week about the quote or the line, "Death came swirling down." So I started to pay more attention to that.
I did see it once too.
There were a few. I didn't count them this time, but there were a couple.
And the after one thing that I thought, because after Surway tells Naor what the skin spy told her, and Kellis is contemplating killing him, he tells him, "I love you."
So Nayor tells Kellis he loves
Right.
him, right?
Hmm.
But in that moment, Nayor thinks that Kellis is actually Moangus, right?
He's talking to Moingus. He knows Kellis isn't Moingus, but he's like screaming at the whole world and screaming at Moingus.
Okay. I was wondering about that because it seemed kind of out of the blue, but that makes more sense.
I
But
mean, they do look very similar, so
Kellis is Moingus. They are the same people as far as Nair's concerned, I think. I don't think that he even thinks that the Dunyin are people anymore. They're all just kind of like a hive mind. A whole bunch of people trying to go to the shortest path. And their blood, so they look exactly alike, except for me. I think Moingus had like Swazins, and now he has no eyes. He had Swazins when he left Nair, now he has no eyes.
maybe. Yeah, but I think, I mean, Kellis is approximately the same age that Moangus was when Nayor met him. So I don't know. I just thought, I guess, since it seemed like he was in this state of I don't know, just some state. It didn't seem too far fetched that he would be having some sort of delusions and mistake Kellis for Moangus. But I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter for him. They are virtually the one and the same.
Hmm. I whenever we see the bird, and it's always really weird. Um, yeah, it's always really weird. There was one thing that he tells. The one question. Let me find the page really quick. On 341. Um, I can't find it.
There's a part where he like talks about the mandate being an ember of the apocalypse, meaning that they're still like out there, a flame somewhere. And
Mm-hmm.
he says the Dunyin might just be one more such group. And he's figured out that Kellis isn't Shishwarim, that he is Dunyin now, though they have no clue what Dunyin are still. And then he says, all games end with me. All games. Because he's the architect.
One interesting little detail that I noticed on this reread is that apparently it seems that the council has not only spies among the Enrithi, but they also have spies among the non-men.
Yeah,
Which, I mean, we haven't really, apart from the one non-man that we met in the prologue of Darkness, we haven't really heard anything about them. We're not even sure if they're still around. So it's an interesting piece of information to know that the console is spying on them as well.
Hmm.
That they might
basically
be
said
non-man skin spies.
they have no secrets from the mandate because their spies are like that deep in. He like writes off that the Dunyan could be any part of the men or the non-men because they would know. So he has to be like pretty. The mandate have to have deep spies all over. And since no one can see the skin spies really, it would make sense that they are pretty deep. Who knows how long skin spies have existed currently? 2,000 years, Maybe. Probably not, but maybe.
No idea.
Maybe someone in Akamian's dreams could be a skin spy.
Hmm.
Maybe.
Right.
He,
But I think also maybe I'm wrong, but I do remember a comment mentioning something about a skin spice being a new invention using the old technology of the consult or of the Incroy. But that I think the implication there was that they have not really been seen before in the Three Seas. But I might be wrong or misremembering.
New to him, which the Mandate have been chasing them forever, and I think they last battled, it said 300 years before that is when they disappeared, so up to 300 years ago, they might have had a good idea of what they were capable of. But who knows? History's crazy.
you both are your facial expressions always make me laugh. When you're
Oh,
trying to avoid spoilers, or
there was one part that I thought that was weird when the skin spy had taken Kellis's form and was talking to Serway. Serway still seen like halos on the skin spy.
and he was shorter too, right?
Yeah,
So you knew
but
right. I mean, you knew right away it wasn't him, but he was in another place too.
but
Yeah,
to her, she still saw like the god. She still saw the
But
glowy light coming from him, even
well,
though it was
she
him.
did, but yes, she thought he was Callus. So I guess I would if those halos are just the product of her imagination or her belief in Callus, maybe it doesn't really matter if it's Callus or not, as long as she thinks it was Callus. I don't know. Um,
Must be that the halos are a product of like true conviction, true belief, unending belief. She seems like she'll do anything Kellis wants, even take in SMNet.
yeah, that's a whole other thing. With the bird and the skin spy, he he mentions to him. He asks him if it threatens the holy war, and he says, "No, not yet. Consult father. Is father someone that we know of yet? Because I couldn't remember who, or is that
I
someone we
th-
haven't been introduced to?"
I think the bird is the father, isn't he? He's one of the
The
old fathers.
He is the old father, the architect.
He has many names,
Yeah.
but I think the skin spy sometimes refers to him as father or old father or consult father. So I think it was probably just referring to him.
What did you guys think of the Dunyan Pragma teaching Kellis war? Or teaching Kellis battle, taking them all out and just beating them all with a stick? Or about nature itself always being at war?
Hmm.
I mean that scene just on the face value reminded me a lot of just martial arts films where you have the scene with the sensei teaching the student to fight.
That was the wax on, wax off moment.
He's a little rougher than wax on, wax off, but it reminded me of like 300, the when they were have the kids like you know beat the crap out of each other and train. It's kind of what it reminded me of.
What about the darker Dunning lesson? Neuro neuropuncture. What did you guys think of the neuropuncture part?
Um, Now that reminded me of films more like the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, or other films for mental institutions.
Yeah.
That was pretty dark. Well, first of all, they talked about the defects or the defectives. I don't remember exactly what they call them.
I think that was right. Which I guess is someone who's not perfect. Who knows what
Yeah,
defective is to Dunyan? It could be like you have the wrong color of eyes. You have
that was my question. What makes someone defective in the eyes of the Danyane?
just because they're defective, all doesn't mean that it's not like people. They have strapped to a girdle with their brains exposed and a bunch of needles in them, so they're like feeling horror 24/7 until they die. It'd be a fun life. I hope I'd be the one that like was smiling all the time at least. My
That
brain was
that's
poked to happiness, not poked to anguish.
I would probably prefer a different ending for myself. Um, but that was a pretty gruesome scene.
And he talks about like the thousand halls and how that's the only like lit up place down a mile deep below Ishwal is a place they just have all these humans strapped to some kind of machine. They talked about what 42 muscles and 52 different facial expressions or something like that. And that's how Kellis learned to read people's faces, apparently. Just by having people's faces just look like that all the time places.
Yeah, that was dark.
It does make you wonder what kind of other experiments have the Dunyan done on people to get to the place where they are now. What's the knowledge to get the knowledge they have about how the human body functions or how the mind functions. Um, Seems like they have a very utilitarian approach to people who are not who don't who they don't deem as I don't know, proper Dunyan, or people who are just not gifted or don't meet certain qualifications to become the real Dunyan. I guess human rights are not really a thing.
And do they just throw the other little kids over the wall or what though?
Probably find some sort of use for them, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, rip
Oh,
open their skull and put a needle in it so they're always happy.
let's hope so.
Well, I mean, putting a needle in people's skulls to make them happy, it's not unheard of, even in a more civilized world.
Yeah, there's back in the 40s or 50s, there was still um, what is the lobotomy? I mean, that was an accepted form of treatment for people for up until probably I don't know how long ago they stopped, but it wasn't that long ago. So,
Yeah. And leeches right up till the 1900s.
mm.
Electrocution. We just we've just been trying stuff till it sticks.
Maybe the Dunyan move on to the next phase or next step of evolution.
Let's hope so.
Guess we'll
Yeah.
have to see if they've moved forward or backwards through evolution. Seem pretty powerful, but I still think at this point any single mage could kill Kellis. Nair almost killed Kellis, actually, I forgot. He came within, what, like a centimeter of killing him, and Kellis knew it and just let him. I don't know if Nair knew that he almost killed him. I think he even wonders that.
I don't think Nair was really aware of anything that was happening around him in that moment. But I mean, I would agree that Kellis is not unbeatable, and he, unless he wears a Kore, he probably would. I mean, as far as we know, he should. He's not immune against sorcery.
And now he's finally like accepted the role of the prophet. He's not shooting people away. He's just like spending time with people, acting like the warrior prophet.
Yeah, he's been building a following and building a following in different areas, I guess.
Yeah, you can see that. Speaking of his following, I think Surway after the run-in with the skin spy, she seems to have a different outlook on things, and she's almost encourages Espinette to become, like intimate with Kellis, and she doesn't. She's like, it's fine. Seems like her whole outlook changes on a lot of things. So I wonder what else the skin spy told her that we don't know about yet. But maybe just the experience changed the way that she sees things, because she seems almost like encouraging Espinette to, like, it's okay.
Well, I don't know that she necessarily remembers anything about the skin spy, because
Kellis whelmed her.
Yeah, from what I remember, he basically puts her under hypnosis and removes her memories of that encounter, right?
Oh, okay. I missed that part. Yeah.
It says that he scratches those pieces of parchment from her
Oh,
soul,
that's
meaning
right.
that
Yeah.
like she just don't quite remember what happened. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't get that it was her memory that he had scratched. So
First, he made her tell him everything that he said. He needed all the context of what they wanted to know, and then he erased her memory.
then, how did she remember those things to tell Nair?
So I think what the things she tells Naor are things that Kellis himself told her while they were traveling or while they were together. I don't think that's something that she learned from the skin spy.
Okay, I misunderstood that part then.
That was all stuff that Kellis had told her that she believed was true that would hurt Nair at the time. And then she said it all, and it appeared to affect him deeply. And then I think Kellis is like, I told him to come take you because I knew you wouldn't let him.
Yeah, I mean, she basically she tells him the one thing that he's afraid to admit to himself, the biggest secret that he's been trying to keep hidden the whole time, even though everyone's pretty much guessed. But I guess it's even more painful for him to hear it from Sir Way's mouth. But I think the main point of what would we call, like, Sir Way's interrogation? But I don't know how to describe it. Um, well, I mean, I know how to describe it, but I don't necessarily want to use those words. I think the main point of that encounter was for the skin spy to learn information about Callus.
Mhm.
Um, because I guess he guessed rightly that Survey is the weakest link, or at least the person most susceptible to reveal information about Callus, and also like one that has known Callus for the longest time and probably is one of the people who knows most about Callus. So she is a valuable source of information.
Then we had another skin spy. The thing called Sarsalis showed up again.
I thought it was
And
the same one, wasn't it?
probably it doesn't say exactly. Because at first
Well,
he was Kellis, and then he wasn't injured when he went as Sarsalis. So,
well, I think the reason why I assumed it was the same one is because the Callus and Skin Spy gets stabbed in the chest, and then I think there's a mention of Sarcellus being wounded or having to take some time to heal.
Yeah, he
Um,
tells the bird that he's been wounded, but he needs to heal or something like that.
oh yeah, so it must be the same one. You're right.
which I think would also explain why the height doesn't match. If he's still like Sarcellus's height, but he's just wearing Callus's face, it would make sense that there would be maybe he didn't have time to grow up to Callus's height. I don't know. I don't really know how the skin spine works. Like, do they have just one body and they only change their faces, or do their bodies change as well? I have no idea. I don't know.
Yep, I don't. Who knows?
I wonder if that was a thing just for the reader to know that that wasn't him, because she mentions that he seems shorter. So I thought if they are one height, then that'd be kind of difficult to spy too much. Because I mean, so I wondered if that was just as a this isn't callous, but dear
As the
reader.
reader, I feel like I would have been able to tell regardless, because he was acting unlike Kellis, and I already knew where Kellis was. He was
Yeah.
up with. So I think that was just to show that the skin spies aren't like a perfect representation of who they take. They're just like a close representation. Go back and read about Skios and the darkness that comes before.
Just reread Darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When it describes Skios, there's things that are off about him, but not enough for anyone to know anything the whole time.
I did when Survey comes back to Kellis and Kellis tells her that he traded her, um, and then Survey asks him something like why, and he says because I knew you wouldn't let him. Poor Survey.
I wasn't sure if that was a compliment or if or like I wonder if that's something that Callus actually anticipated, or if that was just a reaction to an outcome, and if Nayor was able to take Survey with him. I wonder how Callus would have reacted. But yeah, it's either way, it's pretty bad.
Pretty brutal. And Esmenet and Survey become besties for a while there.
Well, I feel like Espenet has a very ambivalent feelings about Survey.
Hmm.
There seems to be a lot of jealousy between the two of them.
And friendship. Seems like a real girl relationship. Real girl relationships that I've seen.
Yeah,
And
maybe some girls.
Estenet learns how to read, and Kellis gives her salvation. So what we'll call it when he scratches the
Hmm.
prostitutes are cursed words from the book, and now
Yeah.
she knows how to read. He told her that she was like the whole debating whether she was equal to men or not equal to men, or what is, like, are men equal to each other? That whole little argument was good. I think Estenet grew and made a lot of decisions from that. Also, there was like the hearth talk earlier when they went to her fire, and they're like, what makes the hearth? Is it the fire or the family? And that's how they got her to even come with them in the first place, because they're the family. Bacamian knows that.
Yeah, that little section there. It's 384 on this edition, but um, uh, is it lawful for men to purchase pleasure from a woman? She says no. So why do they? They can't help themselves. They're men, so they have no control. They have no control over their desire. And witness the well-fed harlot sitting before you. So why do men herd cattle? Well, to slaughter. There's um, uh, men. Excuse me. Men cannot dominate their hunger, so they domesticate the objects of their hunger, be it cattle or women.
Yeah, that was a pretty it's a pretty powerful section. Um and part of me part of me enjoys the fact that Callus helps Esmenet feel more empowered and more equal to the men of her world. But at the same time, like, he only says it to manipulate her and to control her. So what good is it really?
That's like all the truths in this book. This book has a lot of good quotes and good lines, but like had had the lesson needed to be something else, Kellis would have turned the words around to equal truths that were opposite lessons.
Yeah, I also maybe have a little bit of a problem with him saying that men are just mindless animals who are not able to that are not able to control their lust or desire. I like. Do you actually agree with that statement?
I think
It's
he
like
said
it.
that we're split in two, that like everyone's got like that animal part of them, and then they have their intellectual parts. And then I think the section ends with him saying that uh, Essenet had already given her animal side to him.
Hmm.
Or no, she'd already given her intellectual. Or no, she had already given up on Acamian, her animal side, because she was desiring Kellis. So it's like a juxtaposition of desire and intellect. And if you're smart enough to recognize your desires and control them. But Kellis is smarter in order to make you chase whatever desire he wants you to have, kind of.
Yeah, I wondered about this, and I think I'm not sure if Baker is talking about men in general or men in this world, because the men in this world seem it's a very dark and hopeless place for um, women, especially, and camels and horses and animals. but I was wondering if it was in reference to this world that he's creating, or if there's more to it than that.
I mean, I don't really have an answer. It's a question I'm asking myself. Um,
Mhm.
but I would agree with you that there are certain stereotypes that seem more exaggerated in the world of the three C's compared to our world, which may be just to drive the point home, maybe the point that he wants to say about our world, but I don't know.
I think since this is kind of a representation of the Crusades, it's more of the people of the times. I was listening to some guy talk about like how we glorify Vikings when really they're just like literal robber rapists that just ride around on a boat and robbed and raped everything. That was like all they did. Literally the only thing a pirate did. So the fact that we like raise them up on a pedestal and everyone like wants to like romanticize being a pirate when what they did was just like pure evil. And then the Crusades were like the Christians being pirates in a sense. So I think like it speaks more of the time than of our current time, where
Yeah.
we all know how to read and we all know how to write and we're
Also,
nuanced.
I forget. I think it was Anna Smith Spark who I asked her about this, and she said that this is a almost like a warning for what it can become too. So if it's if this is a warning for what could happen if we don't keep these things in check, because it has happened before and it can happen again. So
And when I think of books like The Road or other like dystopian books, like, they go back there. We devolve into horrible, less intellectual, more animalistic.
mm, mm,
Yeah, I think there may be something to say about the fact that women or even other minorities are sometimes, if not often, forced to navigate a world where the rules are defined by men, or by other people in power. Um, and yeah, maybe maybe today we don't prohibit women from we don't prohibit women to read, but there's still certain social stigmas or stereotypes that women themselves embrace and sometimes even support, that are or could be considered anti-women or preventing women from having more control over their lives. So I mean, I do see some truth there. I sometimes wonder if it's maybe the depiction are too extreme
mm,
of either men or women, but there's still a lot to talk about, and you can still draw a lot of parallels to our world, for
mm.
sure.
I mean, there are some places in the world right now today that, you know, like in Iran, what is a week or two ago, that that woman was killed for not wearing clothing the way they wanted to wear it. I mean, it's still there's still a lot of awful things still happen to certain types of people. So it is very interesting though, to take apart.
I think it's been cool to watch SMNet's growth and just her empowerment that she's seemingly gaining. she's still weak, like everyone in this book seems to be weak at points, but she's been through a lot and she seems to be evolving. She seems to be like equal to man, and kind of feels bad for Surway for being so just ignorant and kid-like and beautiful, I guess.
So there was something that when Kellis was talking to Espinette and she was uh, thinking back on her daughter, did she let her daughter starve to death? Is that because that's kind of what, or was that because the way that I took it was either she let the daughter starve to death or she saw her as an inconvenience and just didn't care for her, or did I miss what happened there? Because there was a couple of lines in there where she said it would, because her father didn't care about anything, right? Didn't care about her or the daughter, her daughter. So I was, because I took that as that was guilt as much as it was her missing her daughter for what she did to her daughter. Or am I way off?
I think during this she's like reflecting on what her dad did to her, and it says that like everyone who lives here needs to learn how to like provide. So he sold his little daughter to his friends or something at like 11, and she was thinking about how she had sold her own daughter at a young age, and it talked about how the money she had got for selling her daughter lasted a week. So Mamara didn't die. She just sold for enough money for Estinet to get by for a week, because I guess there was like a big famine. It said something horrible, and I'm not going to say that made it seem like the famine was the worst thing ever, though. Whereas Estinet didn't have anything to eat. I feel like they were talking about people like eating bark and grub worms.
I get I mean, this is a really important moment for Esmenet's character, and something that we've heard her talk about before. But every time I think she mentioned her daughter before, she thinks of her. She thought of her as being dead. And so in this chapter, we learn that, well, first of all, Esmenet's an unreliable narrator because her daughter, at least from what we know, is not dead, or at least what was not dead when Esmenet said goodbye to her. Because what happened, as you said, there was a famine in Sumna, and she sold her daughter because she didn't have anything else or any other way to make money and to get food. But the guilt and the idea that she did this to her daughters was so traumatizing for her that she just eventually decided to think of her daughter as being dead. I guess because it was more bearable for her to think of her that way. And but she still feels an enormous guilt because, I mean, she obviously knows what happened to Maimara, and I guess in some way she did the same thing to her daughter that her father did to her.
And
Which would,
Survey.
yeah, it's true. But I guess it's even more painful if that's something that happened to you and then you do it to someone who you care about.
But like
So
her father, she learned the lesson that sometimes you can't feed all the mouths. So she could have died and her daughter could have died, or she could give her daughter away and just think of her as dead and survive. Or she could have just hoped that her daughter thrived somewhere. I guess she assumed that she's dead to her because she's never coming back, so she might as well be dead in her stories.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I
but
don't
I
know.
think
It'd be a shitty thing to actually deal with. Everyone's positions in these books are real crappy to like try to empathize with. You put yourself in their shoes, it's some bad shoes to be in.
Mhm.
yeah, but I think this is probably this is the deepest secret that Esmond has. The worst thing she probably ever did in her life. So the fact that it's something that she shared with Kellis, it tells us about how completely she's in his grasp now. Um,
Yeah.
like she's his. She's told him everything. He has not complete control over her, but I don't think there's much more that she can bear to him anymore. She's completely opened up to him.
All these other men with Espinette try to physically, I'll say, they try to control her physically, but it wasn't until Callus she emotionally, was able to um, use those emotional, get under her skin and get her understand her better, so he can manipulate her instead of it being a brute force thing that everyone else seems to try with her that, of course, never worked.
Not even a Camion, it says.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the fact that he decides to teach her how to read is also a very important part of that process of mastering her. Um, because it I mean it's something that not even a Kamian ever did for her, even though it's something like it's very obvious that that's something she wants to know, she wants to learn, but a Kamian never bothered to actually teach her, even though he's supposedly the teacher of all the characters that we know. um
Yeah.
so the fact that Callus takes the time and the patience to teach her to do this for her is very meaningful to her character, because
It's
it shows
probably.
her he values equally as the men that he usually hangs around with.
Hmm.
What do you guys think about the pickle Proteus is in now? The letter from Maithnette.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I want to feel bad for Proas, but I usually don't. He's I don't like he's a really he's a really difficult character for me to empathize with. Um, maybe that has to do with the fact that I'm not religious, so it's difficult to for me to imagine that religion plays such an important role in someone's life, and that informs most of his decisions. So that's hard, and he's he's just too he's too like I don't know, he's a good guy arguably, but he's just so narrow-minded. It's painful.
It talks about the lesson with Acamian, where Acamian like tried to show him the value of doubt. He says like, go look at all these people for a week and look at the people who doubt and look at the people who are certain, and it's the wise people who are the ones doubting their decisions and other people, and it's all the gung-ho idiots that have no doubt. But he still refused to learn the lesson, and he reflects on how Akamian knew that that was going to get him in trouble by basically saying the tusk was probably a lie. He didn't say it was a lie, he just insinuated that everything's got some lies in it. And at the time, Proteus didn't know that that was going to get Akamian kicked out, but he realizes Akamian knew the whole time, and he thought that doubt was an important enough lesson to, like, lose a student over.
Yes, it's not a lesson that Proas seems to have learned. Even with the Kamian, he's like first he's like, well, certainly a Kamian is a sorcerer, so I must expel him because that's the pious thing to do. And then he reads the letter from Mathanet and he thinks, oh, actually, the whole time accepting a Kamian was the pious thing to do, so of course I must do that now. Or I mean, I would try to do it if the Kamian wasn't dead, allegedly. It's just there's no in between for Proas. And I know it's interesting. Like, in some way, he is like one of the most moral characters in the story, but then it doesn't necessarily lead him to make the right decisions or the most compassionate decisions. But at least he does feel some remorse, or there is some part of him that questions the things he does and the compromises that he has made. But in the end, it avails to nothing. So what's the point? Even if he's a good guy, it doesn't really matter in the end, right?
I love that out of all the characters in this book, out of all the characters in this series, Proteus is like the one that really gets you like heated.
Well, Proteus and Sabon. I hate Sabon more. Sabon's the worst.
I can't wait till we get to the very end to see what you think of all of these characters.
I know what I think of Sabon. But no, Proteus is a complicated guy. I will acknowledge that. He's frustrating. He's frustrating to read. He's so stubborn.
Oh, and we got one little brief bit of Akamian talking to the Scarlet Spires.
Yeah, poor Camion. He should have stayed at the camp. We're safe.
That's what happens when you like books too much.
Yes. Let that be a warning to you both.
Yep, order off Amazon. Don't ever go to Barnes & Noble. That's the last place with a bunch of books together. Library, I guess.
Yeah. Avoid libraries at any cost.
Yeah, in a blick of Camion. I really felt bad for Camion during that whole sequence. He's, soiling himself, and it's just not a good spot to be in. But we do know that he survives for at least a little bit longer because he wrote some of the beginning of a chapter, the little quotes, and so you know that he's probably going to survive.
I was wondering if you were going to catch him talking about the battle outside of Anubrit, the Battle of the Slopes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, did he? I didn't catch that.
Yeah, so he'll probably be okay for a little bit longer.
But he's not in an enviable position at the moment.
No.
They got him chained above some kind of circle that makes magic painful, I guess.
Yeah.
And he still said something, whether it was just to not have to deal with a Lazarus anymore or what, who knows. He knows he's going to die, it seems like, or he's pretty much assured that he's going to die.
Yeah, the Scarlet Spires also think he's gonna die. There was a little short paragraph where I think it's a comment explaining the difference between the sorcery that the Mandate uses and the Anagoga sorcery of the Scarlet Spires, which honestly doesn't make it a lot more clearer for me at all.
It pretty much says that all the other schools have to like use rudimentary like things to get them to, like, if they want to burn someone, they gotta like make a dragon head go burn someone, whereas the Mandate somehow have the ability to just create burning instead of like the, having the effects of it. And then he says basically that the Mandate are philosophers and the other schools are poets, meaning that they just possess a much greater use of the language as opposed to just a little flattery of language like all the other schools have.
Yeah, I mean that was an interesting comparison or analogy. But like the way I would understand it would be that I guess philosophers attempt to describe the world in a very like precise terms, while poets sort of dance around things and allude to things and try to relate things to the reader through like images or symbols. Whereas I guess philosopher would try to get straight to the essence of the thing. Um, but I'm not sure that metaphor really helps me to understand the sorcery. But I guess it's supposed to be like a more of a soft magic system. We 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 haven't really learned much beyond this so far, I think.
Nope, we haven't.
We know that they make a lot of they definitely can make fire, the sorcerers. Um, it seems to be their preferred way of annihilating people on the battlefields. We've also seen a lot of fire camps, campfires lit up by a spell. But I don't. I'm not sure if we've seen many non-fiery magic things yet.
The best description I've seen is like a Canadian saying that a prophet speaks the words of gods and a wizard like mocks the words of gods. They both can speak the language that God used to create the world. Or no, a prophet like hears God's words to give to people, and a wizard or a mage like speaks the language God used to create. But they mumble it, so it only destroys. And it's all fractured. The Mandate know a certain little chunk, the Scarlet Spires know a certain little chunk, the Sishoran know a certain little chunk. But nobody yet has all the chunks.
It didn't even occur to me that you could have all the chunks or attempt to have all the chunks. Right?
anything's possible. If there's a walking whirlwind that causes the apocalypse, then anything's possible.
I'm glad I'm reading this with you, with both of you, because there's so much stuff that I miss, or just don't catch. So, do you guys have anything else on your notes that we didn't talk about?
I'm actually sure I do, but it was a lot. Oh, the part where Nair is teaching Kellis War, and he like talks about how all men are bound to one another, some by chains, some by ropes, some by strings, all of different lengths. They call these bindings the Meutafuri, the ligaments of war. And each ligament has a different flexibility. Just the way that Nair described war was really interesting. And he told him that there's like the moment you have to seize, and then Kellis is like, I think that moment's already passed.
It was one of the funnier moments in these few chapters.
And then the part that talked about the tree warring, how nature like is constantly at war, but unlike humans, nature's heart only beats once per year, I think it said, which is really interesting. That's like why the tree grows in all ways at once, because it's like warring in all ways at once, whereas we have so many beats between, we can war one direction. It was just really interesting. And I live in nature, so I can see nature at war when I go out. Trees bent sideways trying to catch the sun. Trees grown out of rock, so the roots just are in precarious positions. Nothing here has water. It's a constant war.
Yeah, I mostly see trees battling concrete in the place where I live.
Battling concrete.
Trees win. I've seen it. I've seen the broken concrete.
For sure. Like one of other little funny scenes was the one where Comphis comes to find Martimus after the whole battle's finished. And he's sitting there on the hill with the Swazan standard. And Comphis comes and he hacks down the pole. And then Martimus is like, well, Comphis is not dead. And Callus is not dead. And Comphis is like, oh, really? Pity. Since I sent you to collect his head before the battle.
Yeah, I've heard people say that these books have like no humor in them, but there's lots of, well, not lots, but there's some humor in them. Except a very dry, droll humor, situational.
Yeah, there are definitely some funny moments. Sometimes they're just so absurd to the point that they're funny.
Okay.
But Callus throws in a joke here and then.
Yeah, he gets people laughing. And with Callus, it's, I think both of you have said during this whole journey is that everything's for a reason, and he's, so you never know I don't know if he's ever been sincere. It's always ends for a goal. It's never just, there's always a purpose for everything.
I think a good rule of a thumb is that he's never being sincere.
Yeah.
When he's talking to someone who he can't dominate is when he's the most truthful, probably. So when he's talking to Nair, he can be less deceptive. He has to be more truthful because Nair's I think he says he's like the only person who, how did he put it? Nair's the only person that sees as far as the Dunyan now, somehow.
On page 379, Waraju, he starts to think that Waraju sees him, or Kella starts to think he's catching on to him, and he cracks a joke about. He says, "What is it that I see?" This is Pride. You see Pride Master, and he says, "Not with that face." And everybody laughs.
Yeah, because he felt embarrassed by the answer he had to give.
Yeah.
He was too prideful.
So there are those moments now and then.
Yeah, humor is, like good books, really subjective. It's just all about how you feel about it. Some people like the dark humor. Some people just don't.
Yeah, I also feel like a lot of the humor is not it's not obvious. It's not immediately obvious. Like sometimes you have to like it's like he doesn't necessarily tell you that this is a funny scene and you're supposed to laugh at what's happening. It's like you kind of have to figure it out for yourself from the context or from like what the people are or how they're reacting to something that someone else says. Um, there have definitely been moments where I read a scene and did not realize that someone cracked a joke until I reread it.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just humor that, doesn't come to me naturally.
Oh, and there's a part where Nair was talking about like not being of the people, and he says that if war was worship, that he would be the most pious Slivendy, the greatest among the people, not of the people. He's going to be more than the people. Because if murder was like worship, then he was going to just be the biggest murderer.
Yeah, but it's still not enough because he's still pretending. He's still not 100% convinced that the skill bendy way is the right way, and they can smell it on him, and that's why they keep mocking him and disrespecting him. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean the whole section, the whole part where Kellis essentially dissects Naor's character, it's one of my favorite parts. It's it gives you a really good perspective on why Naor's been acting the way he's acted and why he treats her way and the others the way he does. And it underlines the tragedy of his character, which it's fascinating and it's sad. It's really sad to read.
Yeah.
And it doesn't
Poor Nair belongs to like nobody. He's not of this people or that people or any people.
yeah. No, Saban, no.
I'm going to start working a new angle and just try to make Katerina like Savon now. It might be hard. I'm going to try.
Yeah. It's funny.
He has like 1, 2 wars, kind of, though. He's been the end factor in 2 wars. Gotta give him a little credit.
I guess he's persistent, but he's not the sharpest tool in the box. I think we can all agree on that.
It's true.
You can't argue with that. Well, you guys have anything else? Lots of stuff. These just a few chapters. Lots of stuff happens.
Yep. And next week, I think we're going into the desert, which I'm very excited about. As someone who,
Yeah, it
with a
seems like
professed love of deserts.
it said that all the wells have been poisoned now, and they're kind of forced to walk along the hills, and they're carrying water forever, and they got ships carrying water for them now too.
The Emperor's ships. Which, because the Emperor has been such a reliable ally so far.
I thought you were a fan of the Emperor.
Oh, I am.
He's very reliable to himself.
Yeah.
Everyone in this book is very reliable to themselves.
I'm definitely a fan of Sirius, but objectively speaking, he's not been the greatest help for the Holy War.
By that Saban.
Objectively speaking, Saban's done good for the Holy War, of course.
For Saban.
Yeah. But just on just a personal level, no, not a fan of Saban.
So I did. Someone posted on the forum that they are reading along with us. So that's pretty cool. That's people are reading along. That's really neat. So if you are one of those people reading along, next week we'll discuss chapters 18 through 21. That's about 100 pages or so. There's 200 pages left. So within the next couple of weeks we'll finish up this one.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Things are gonna get exciting.
I have no doubt.
There's already been a lot more that's happened in this book than the last book. If you're not counting political intrigue, there's been 2 battles, probably 1,000 miles marched.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. For some reason, I do feel like a lot more happened in the darkness that comes before than in this book. But yeah, when you start listing things that have already happened in the Warrior Prophet, it's a lot. I don't know.
It's
This book.
the little intricate details that the darkness that comes before is filled with, whereas this is like the march of the Holy War. Less intricate details, more characters all connected, like in proximity to each other, whereas the first one was people coming together and all the intricate details. So it was fun to read. They've both been fun to read so far.
So, which is your favorite book in the trilogy? Because you've both read it once. Which is your favorite?
For me, I would still say it's the darkness that comes before. I think, part of it has to do with the fact, as we talked about, that it is dense. There's a lot to unpack, and you can read it again and again. There's still more you can uncover. But also, I'm a big fan of the little details and the intrigue and the politics. So, and I think of the three, in terms of politics, there is the Warrior Prophet and Thousandfold Thought are not as politics heavy. They're more about like the battles and mostly the battles, some intrigue, but most of the politics takes place in the first book, and that's what I enjoy usually, and not just this series but other series as well.
I probably think the third book's the best. But I guess we'll see when we get there. If I remember right, I think it'll have more of the finer details and intrigue than Katerina remembered. Where this is more action heavy, this book we're reading, the next book, is action heavy, but it's the ending of a series, so
There are certainly a lot of resolutions to the things that we've been building up to.
and I think those resolutions are fun. Most people say this book is their favorite book, though, I feel like, of the series.
Yeah,
The one we're reading now.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. That it's most people's favorite book because it is. Is it fast paced? I don't know if I would agree that it's fast paced, but there is a lot of action. Yeah.
There's more action for sure. So if that's something that you enjoy, I can see why a lot of people would like that. I'm not one of those people. Sometimes I just skip the action scenes.
You're not alone.
This
There's
battle
few.
was really interesting because the two battles we've had before, really, they had like some first person perspectives of people that are like in the charge and on the line, and this one was just like them on a hill looking at dust. Like, oh, why is that dust there? Oh, why is that army not moving forward? And it was like more of the big hosts, just to show, I think, the broad scale of the war. You can't really see how epic it is if Nayer's just down leading one little battalion or something.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas from far away, thinking of like a 7 mile line of humans lined up with another 7 mile long line of humans, that's gross.
Especially from the back of the line. It's no good.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, higher chance of survival though in the back line. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe both of these guys had their whole back of the line get washed away at one point. They were running through the encampments of both sides. This was just a pretty wild battle. Poor
Yeah,
Scaris.
I did enjoy this battle more than the first one. Probably because it was a lot more messy, which I think makes it more fun, more interesting. But also the fact that you get this like bird's eye view sections interlaid with the more like personal stories, like with Survey and with Mayor and how they and then Kellis and how they're experiencing the battle. That was a really nice contrast, and I think it made it a lot more dynamic than just watching Sabon destroy one horse after another.
Yeah, those horses.
It's that conviction you talk about. He's convicted enough to go through all those horses.
Yeah, I guess Sabon figured it out. You just have to be enough of a believer. That's enough to win a war.
Start hashtag Sawbone was right. I'll just start that. Well, cool. It's always I learn so much every week that I missed because I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, like Katerina said. So it really helps me out to follow along and find all the stuff I missed and just didn't understand. Like the battle, I was a little lost on. So it makes more sense now. Cool. So Daniel, where can people find you, or do you not want to be found?
I don't care. Search hard enough, you'll find me, or just give up.
And Katerina, where can people find you?
I'm on the Page Twing forum. You can approach me there, and I'm also on Instagram at the Errant.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone who's been listening. This was a packed few chapters, so thanks for hanging out with us and listening to us and listening to me try and understand what's going on. So, well, we will catch everyone next week. Thanks again for listening.